Luna shivered in the cold alley, curling her body around her tiny puppy. Rain poured from the sky, dripping through the cracks in the old, broken roof above them. Her fur was soaked, but she didn't care. All that mattered was the small life in front of her. Her puppy, barely a few days old, wasn't moving much. His tiny chest rose and fell in weak, slow breaths. Luna licked his face, trying to warm him. She whimpered softly, nudging him with her nose. "Wake up, little one," she seemed to say. But he stayed still. She was hungry, so hungry. Her body ached from exhaustion, and her milk was running out. She needed food. She needed warmth. But most of all, she needed help. Luna looked around the alley. There was no one. Only wet cardboard boxes, trash bins, and the sound of raindrops hitting the ground. She had lived on the streets for months, running from danger, hiding from humans who chased her away. But now she couldn't run anymore. She had her baby to protect. Then she heard footsteps. Her ears perked up. A man was walking past the alley, his coat pulled tight against the rain. He was carrying a bag in one hand, his head down, hurrying to his car. Luna's heart pounded. Should she trust him? Would he help? She had no choice. With all the strength she had left, she stepped forward, her legs shaking. She barked once, weakly, desperately. The man stopped. He turned his head, eyes narrowing as he looked into the dark alley. Luna barked again, then lowered her head and nudged her puppy toward him. Her eyes were wide, pleading. For a moment, the man didn't move. Rain dripped from his hair as he stared at her. He saw the ribs showing through her fur, the way she trembled, the way her eyes never left her baby. Then, slowly, he stepped closer. Luna held her breath. Would he help? Or would he chase her away, like so many others had before? The man crouched down. He set his bag aside and reached out a hand. Luna didn't move. Her body tensed, but she didn't growl or run. She couldn't. The man's fingers brushed against the tiny puppy. His face changed. His eyes softened. "Oh no," he whispered. He gently picked up the puppy, holding him carefully in his hands. The small body was cold, too cold. Luna whined and licked her pup's head, her tail wagging slightly for the first time in weeks. The man looked at her. "You want me to help him?" he asked softly. Luna didn't understand his words, but she understood his tone. She let out a small bark, almost like a yes. The man sighed. He looked at his car, then back at her. His fingers curled around the puppy, protecting him from the rain. "All right," he said. "Come on." He stood up and walked toward his car. Luna hesitated. Could she trust him? Would he take her baby away? Then she saw the way he held her puppy, so gently, so carefully. Her paws splashed in the puddles as she ran after him. Everything was about to change. Luna jumped into the man's car without hesitation. She didn't know him, but she knew one thing: he had her puppy. And right now, he was her only hope. The man quickly closed the door and turned on the heater. Warm air blew through the vents, and Luna felt the difference right away. But she didn't care about herself. She watched as the man unzipped his coat and carefully placed the tiny puppy inside, against his chest. "Stay with me, little guy," he murmured. Luna whined, her eyes fixed on her baby. He was still so cold. His tiny body barely moved. Was she too late? The man turned the key, and the car's engine roared to life. He pulled out of the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel with one hand while holding the puppy close with the other. His face was tight with worry. Luna didn't understand where they were going, but she didn't take her eyes off her puppy. Every few seconds, she let out a soft whimper, as if asking, "Is he okay?" The man glanced at her. "I know you're worried," he said. His voice was calm but serious. "We're going to the vet. Just hang in there." Luna didn't know what a vet was. All she knew was that her puppy was sick, and this man was trying to help. She had no choice but to trust him. The cars sped through the rainy streets. The man checked his mirrors, then pressed harder on the gas. Luna could feel the car moving faster. He was in a hurry, just like she was. After a few minutes, bright lights appeared ahead. A large building with glowing signs came into view. The man pulled into the parking lot and jumped out of the car, still holding the puppy close to his chest. "Come on, girl," he called, looking back at Luna. Luna leaped out of the car and followed him through the glass doors. Inside, the air was warm, and the smell of medicine filled her nose. She heard voices, saw people in white coats, and felt her paws slide slightly on the shiny floor. The man rushed to the front desk. "I need help," he said urgently. "It's a newborn pup. He's freezing, and I don't think he's breathing right." A woman in a blue uniform looked at him, then at the puppy in his arms. Her eyes widened. "Bring him back. Hurry." The man followed her through a door, and Luna ran after him. Inside the room, a vet, a woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice, took the puppy from the man's hands. She placed the tiny pup on a soft blanket and quickly began checking him. She pressed a stethoscope to his chest and listened. Luna stood frozen, her body tense. Her ears were back, her tail low. She wanted to help, but she didn't know what to do. The vet's face was serious. She reached for something, a small tube, and gently placed it near the puppy's mouth. Warm oxygen flowed out. "Come on, little one," the vet whispered. "Breathe for me." Luna let out a quiet, desperate whine. The man knelt beside her and rested a hand on her back. "Let's hope he's a fighter," he murmured. Seconds felt like hours. Then, suddenly, a tiny sound, a soft, weak squeak. The puppy's tiny paws twitched. His nose wriggled slightly. Luna's ears shot up. Her eyes widened. "He's responding," the vet said with a small smile. "He's not out of danger yet, but he's fighting." Luna let out a low, relieved whimper. She stepped closer, gently licking her puppy's tiny head. The man let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. For the first time in days, there was hope. The vet continued to work quickly, her hands gentle but steady. Luna watched closely, never taking her eyes off her puppy. Her heart raced with every second that passed. The little pup's tiny body was still so fragile. She could feel his weakness, but she could also feel something else, a spark of hope. "Just a little longer, little one," the vet murmured. "We're almost there." Luna's tail was low, and her body remained tense as she hovered by the table. She wanted to be as close as possible, but she didn't want to get in the way. Her paws shook with worry. She whimpered softly, trying to call out to her puppy with her eyes. The man stood beside her, rubbing her back. His hand was warm, and Luna leaned into it for comfort. She was scared, but something about the man's calmness helped her feel a little less afraid. The vet worked quickly but carefully, checking the puppy's heart rate, making sure his breathing was steady. She took her stethoscope off and glanced at the man. "He's holding on. I'm going to keep him warm now, and we'll see if he starts to recover." The man nodded, his face still filled with worry. "What else can we do?" "Well, right now, we just need to wait and see if he gets stronger," the vet said. "We'll keep him in the warm incubator for the next few hours. If he makes it through the night, we'll have a better chance." Luna's ears perked up at the word night. She knew that meant a long wait. She didn't know what would happen in the morning, but she didn't care. She would wait as long as it took. Her puppy needed her. The vet carefully lifted the tiny puppy and placed him into a small, heated incubator. It hummed softly, keeping the little one warm. Luna stepped closer, resting her nose against the glass. She could see the little pup's chest rising and falling slowly, but he was still so small, so weak. The man looked down at Luna, his face full of worry, but also kindness. "You did good, girl," he said softly. "You found me. You gave him a chance." Luna looked up at him, her eyes shining with gratitude. She had found him, yes, but it wasn't just luck. It was the love she had for her puppy, and the love she felt for this man now. He was kind to her baby. She didn't know why, but she was beginning to trust him completely. The hours seemed to crawl by. Luna lay on the cold floor next to the incubator, her body tense, her eyes never leaving her puppy. The man sat on a chair beside her, tapping his fingers nervously against the armrest. The clinic was quiet, except for the soft hum of the incubator and the occasional sound of footsteps outside the room. Finally, after what felt like forever, the vet returned. Her smile was small but warm. "Good news," she said. "He's still fighting. His breathing is steadier now, and his temperature is normal again." Luna's tail twitched and a soft whine escaped her throat. She was relieved, but she knew there was still a long road ahead. The vet looked at her, her eyes softening. "He's a fighter, just like his mom." The man smiled, reaching down to pet Luna's head. "Thank you," he said quietly. The vet nodded. "It's not over yet, but you're doing everything right. Just keep him close, and keep loving him." Luna wagged her tail, pressing her face against the glass of the incubator. Her puppy was still alive. He was still with her. That was all that mattered. As the hours passed into the night, Luna stayed close, her heart full of hope. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she was certain of one thing. She would never give up on her puppy. No matter what happened, they would face it together. Morning came slowly, and the clinic was quiet. The soft beeping of machines and the hum of the incubator were the only sounds that filled the room. Luna had not moved all night, her eyes locked on the incubator where her tiny puppy lay. She had stayed close to him through every minute, every hour. The man, Jack, as Luna had come to know him, had also spent the night in the waiting area, only leaving briefly to grab a coffee. He had tried to sleep but found himself checking on the puppy every few minutes. Luna's eyes were heavy, but she couldn't sleep. Not now. Not when her baby was still so fragile. She rested her head on the cold floor, but her eyes never left the little incubator. Around dawn, the clinic door opened, and a familiar face walked in, Dr. Emily, the vet who had helped save her puppy. She smiled warmly when she saw Luna and Jack. "Good morning, everyone," Dr. Emily said in a soft voice. She checked the incubator, adjusting the temperature slightly. "Let's see how our little fighter is doing." Luna stood up and paced, her paws clicking on the floor. She was anxious, but her instincts told her to be patient. Jack stood beside her, rubbing her back gently. Dr. Emily opened the incubator and carefully lifted the small puppy. The little one was still weak, but there was a noticeable change. His tiny body was warmer, and his breathing was no longer as shallow. He was still a long way from being healthy, but he had made it through the night. He was a fighter. Luna's tail wagged slightly, and she took a few cautious steps closer. Jack smiled down at her. "He's going to be okay, isn't he?" Dr. Emily nodded, her eyes bright with hope. "He's showing signs of improvement. We'll keep him for a few more days, but I'm confident he's going to make it. He's stronger than we thought." Luna let out a quiet whine, almost as if she was sighing with relief. She could feel the weight on her chest lift. Her puppy was going to be okay. Dr. Emily placed the little puppy back in the incubator, and Luna stepped closer to it, pressing her nose against the glass. Her tail wagged a little more now. Jack crouched beside her, his hand resting on her back. "You did it, Luna," he said softly. "You saved him." Luna's ears perked up as she looked at him, then back at her puppy. She didn't need words to understand what he meant. She had fought for her baby, just as he had fought for his life. And now, they had a chance. Over the next few days, Luna's puppy continued to improve. His tiny body grew stronger, and his once weak breathing became more regular. Luna was never far from his side, always watching over him with a loving eye. Jack visited every day, sitting beside Luna and giving her the comfort she needed. He'd bring food for her, and sometimes, when the day was quiet, he'd talk to her, telling her stories of his life. But mostly, they shared a peaceful silence, understanding each other without words. One afternoon, after a few days of steady progress, Dr. Emily entered the room with good news. "He's doing great," she said with a smile. "He's strong enough to go home today. But I want you to keep him warm and fed and bring him back in a week for a checkup." Luna's tail wagged furiously. She could hardly believe it. Her puppy, her little fighter, was coming home with her. Jack smiled, standing up. "We'll take good care of him, I promise." The vet smiled back. "I can see that." She gently patted Luna's head. "You're one amazing mom, Luna." Luna looked at her puppy, who was now strong enough to squirm in his incubator. He was still small, but his eyes sparkled with life. She nuzzled him through the glass, her heart swelling with love. Jack helped her into his car, and they drove home together. The puppy lay on Luna's lap, a soft whimper escaping his mouth. Luna licked his tiny head, comforted by the warmth of his little body. Everything had changed. They were no longer just a stray mother and her sick puppy. They were a family now. The car ride home was quiet, but the atmosphere was full of warmth and hope. Jack drove carefully, one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting on Luna's head as she lay next to him with her puppy in her lap. Luna was calm now, her eyes soft as she looked down at the tiny bundle in her care. The little puppy, named Lucky by Jack, was still small and fragile, but every day he grew a little stronger. His tiny body wiggled in Luna's lap as he let out a faint whimper. Luna licked his tiny ears gently, offering him comfort. Jack couldn't help but smile, watching the bond between them. The drive to Jack's house didn't take long, but it felt like an eternity for Luna. She was eager to get home, to settle into a safe space where she could be with her puppy and Jack, where they could all rest without fear. When they arrived, Jack opened the door and led them inside. The house was simple, but it was warm and clean, everything Luna and Lucky needed. Luna looked around the room with curiosity, sniffing the air. She was still unsure about this new place, but something about it felt right. Jack set her puppy down on a soft blanket on the floor, and Luna immediately curled up beside him. She watched Jack closely, not sure what he would do next. Jack went into the kitchen and came back with a bowl of food for Luna. He placed it on the floor in front of her, and she sniffed it carefully before eating. She was hungry, but her focus never left her puppy. She ate quickly, but not so quickly that she couldn't keep an eye on Lucky. Lucky, who had been quiet for a while, gave a soft yip, and Luna turned her head to see him trying to stand up. He was still shaky, but his determination was clear. Luna gave him a nudge with her nose, helping him balance. Jack smiled at the sight. "You're getting strong, little guy," Jack said softly, his voice filled with warmth. "Soon, you'll be running around like a real puppy." Luna's tail wagged a little as she looked up at Jack. It was clear to her now that Jack wasn't just someone who had helped them out of a tough situation. He was part of their family now. The days passed quickly, filled with moments of quiet happiness. Lucky continued to grow stronger, and Luna never left his side. She would nudge him when he tried to wander too far, gently encouraging him to rest when he was tired. Jack, too, took great care of them both. He made sure to feed Luna the best food he could find, and every day he would spend time playing with Lucky, laughing at his playful energy. But it wasn't just Lucky who was changing. Luna, too, was beginning to heal. She was no longer just a stray dog fighting to survive. She was loved. She was part of a family. Jack's kindness had given her something she had lost long ago: hope. One evening, as Jack sat on the couch, Lucky snuggled in his lap, and Luna at his feet, he looked at the two of them with a soft smile. "I'm glad you two found me," he said quietly. Luna looked up at him with a grateful gaze, as if she understood every word. Jack had lost his own family years ago, and he had been lonely ever since. But now, with Luna and Lucky by his side, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: purpose. They were his family now, and he would do everything he could to protect them, just as they had protected each other. Luna's tail wagged softly, and Lucky rolled over, showing his little belly as he wiggled in Jack's lap. Luna smiled to herself. She was home. The world outside might still be full of dangers, but in this small house with Jack and her puppy, Luna knew she had everything she needed. Together, they would face whatever came their way. They were a family now, and nothing could ever change that. Weeks passed, and Luna, Jack, and Lucky settled into their new life together. The little puppy was growing fast. He was no longer the fragile, tiny creature that had been so weak and helpless in the clinic. Now Lucky was full of energy, always running around and exploring his new home. Luna watched over him carefully. Her instincts as a mother never left her, and she was always by his side, guiding him with gentle nudges and soft growls when he got too close to something dangerous. She was so proud of how far he had come. Jack also noticed how much Lucky had changed. He was more active now, chasing after balls and chewing on his favorite toys. Lucky would often wag his little tail so hard that his whole body shook. Jack would laugh and scoop him up into his arms, saying, "You're getting big so fast, little guy." Luna would watch them, her heart full of warmth. She had never imagined that she would be here, in a home where she and her puppy were loved and cared for. Every day, she grew more attached to Jack. She would curl up beside him in the evenings as he watched TV, resting her head on his lap. Jack would smile and run his fingers through her fur, and Luna would close her eyes, savoring the feeling of safety and love. But even though life was peaceful, Luna never forgot her past. Sometimes, when she looked out the window, she would catch a glimpse of the street outside, and the memories of her struggles would come flooding back. She had lived on the streets for so long, fighting for survival. But now she had a family, and she would protect them with everything she had. One day, Jack decided it was time for Lucky's first trip to the park. He had been waiting for this moment for weeks, excited to see Lucky play outside. Jack grabbed a leash and attached it to Lucky's collar, then put on Luna's leash too. "Ready to go, you two?" Jack asked with a smile. Luna wagged her tail, and Lucky jumped up and down, barking excitedly. They stepped outside into the bright sunshine. The park was just a short walk away, and the fresh air felt good. Lucky sniffed the ground, taking in all the new smells, while Luna walked calmly beside Jack, keeping a watchful eye on her puppy. At the park, Lucky's excitement reached new heights. He ran around in circles, chasing after a ball that Jack threw for him. Luna stood nearby, her eyes always on him. She was happy to see him so carefree and full of life, but she still kept a protective watch over him. Jack laughed, enjoying the sight of Lucky running around. "You're gonna be a real athlete, aren't you?" he said, tossing the ball again. Lucky's little legs moved quickly as he darted after it. After a while, Jack sat down on a bench, letting Luna sit beside him. He watched Lucky play, his heart full of happiness. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. His life had changed completely since Luna and Lucky came into it. As the afternoon wore on, Jack looked down at Luna. "I'm really glad you found me, Luna," he said softly. "I don't know what I would have done without you two." Luna gazed up at him with her gentle eyes, her tail wagging slightly. She didn't need words to understand what he meant. She had found him, yes, but he had also found her. Together, they had built a life full of love and hope. Lucky finally ran over to Jack, panting happily and holding the ball in his mouth. He dropped it at Jack's feet, looking up at him with pleading eyes. Jack smiled and threw the ball again, and Lucky bounded after it once more. Luna stayed by Jack's side, her head resting against his leg. She knew that this was the life she had always dreamed of, a life filled with love, security, and family. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, Jack stood up, holding Lucky in his arms. "Time to go home, buddy," he said with a chuckle. Luna followed close behind, her heart light with joy. She didn't know what the future held, but as long as she had Jack and Lucky, she was ready to face anything. They were a family now, and that was all that mattered. Life in Jack's house was peaceful, and the days passed by in a happy blur. Luna and Lucky had settled into their routine. Jack went to work during the day, and Luna would take care of her little puppy while he was gone. She kept a watchful eye on him, making sure he didn't get into trouble. Lucky was growing fast, and every day he seemed more energetic. Jack would come home in the evening, tired but happy, and Lucky would greet him with excited barks and jumps. Luna would wag her tail, happy to see him too. The three of them were becoming a close-knit family. But despite all the joy in the house, there was one challenge Luna and Jack had not expected: Lucky's endless curiosity. Lucky was a smart little puppy, and as he grew, his interest in exploring the world around him increased. Jack had puppy-proofed the house as best as he could, but Lucky seemed to find new ways to get into mischief. One evening, Jack came home to find a mess in the living room. Cushions were scattered on the floor, and one of his favorite shoes was chewed up beyond recognition. Luna looked at Jack, her eyes wide, as if she was trying to say, "It wasn't me, I swear." Jack couldn't help but laugh. "You're a troublemaker, aren't you, Lucky?" he said, shaking his head. Lucky wagged his tail and gave Jack a sheepish look, almost as if he was apologizing. Luna patted over to Jack, nudging him with her nose as if to say, "It's okay. He's just being a puppy." Jack smiled and reached down to pet both Luna and Lucky. "Well, you're both lucky you're so cute," he said, scratching their ears. But the mess wasn't the only problem. Lucky had recently started running outside every time the door was open. It was becoming a real challenge for Jack to keep him inside, especially when Luna wasn't always quick enough to stop him. One afternoon, as Jack was getting groceries from his car, Lucky darted out the door, his little paws flying. Luna ran after him, barking loudly, but she was slower than Lucky. Jack turned around just in time to see Luna chasing him down the sidewalk. "Luna, come back," Jack called. Luna ignored him and kept running after her puppy, her instincts taking over. She could hear Lucky's excited yips ahead, and she pushed herself harder, determined to catch him. Jack ran after both of them, panic rising in his chest. He didn't want to lose them. Luna had always been so protective of Lucky, and now it was her turn to look after him when he was in danger. Finally, after what felt like forever, Luna caught up to Lucky. She grabbed the scruff of his neck gently in her teeth and stopped him in his tracks. Lucky turned around, surprised, and gave her a small whine. Jack caught up, breathing heavily, and knelt down to scoop Lucky into his arms. "That's enough, buddy," he said, holding him close. Lucky wagged his tail, seemingly proud of his little adventure. Luna trotted up to Jack, looking at him with a mix of relief and guilt. She had done what she was supposed to. She had protected her puppy. But Jack couldn't help but laugh. "You're both a handful," he said, petting Luna's head. Jack knew they needed to be more careful from now on. He decided it was time to put a fence around the yard so that Lucky couldn't run off anymore. But as he looked down at the two of them, he realized that this was all part of the adventure. With Lucky growing more independent and curious, Jack knew there would be many more challenges ahead, but he was ready for them. He had Luna, who would always protect her little one, and Lucky, who brought joy and laughter into their lives every day. As Jack looked at his little family, he felt a sense of pride and love. They had come a long way, and no matter what challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them together. Luna and Lucky were more than just pets, they were family. And no matter how much trouble Lucky caused, Jack wouldn't change a thing. Luna looked up at him, tail wagging. It was a small gesture, but to Jack, it meant the world. He smiled and said softly, "I'm so glad you both are here." And as the sun set, casting a golden glow over the yard, Jack knew that together, they could handle anything. As time went on, Jack, Luna, and Lucky settled into a peaceful and happy life together. The challenges they had faced in the beginning, Lucky's curiosity, Luna's protectiveness, and Jack's own adjustments, seemed like distant memories. Now their days were filled with love, laughter, and the joy of just being together. Lucky had grown into a healthy, energetic young dog. He was no longer the tiny, fragile puppy who needed constant care and attention. Now he could run and play for hours, his tail wagging as he chased after balls and zoomed around the yard. Luna kept a watchful eye on him, always there when he needed guidance or a gentle nudge. Every morning, Jack would wake up to find Lucky curled up at the foot of his bed, and Luna would be lying beside him, her head resting on his pillow. The bond between them was stronger than ever. Luna had become more than just a mother to Lucky. She was his guide, his protector, and his best friend. And Lucky had become more than just a puppy to Jack. He was the little light in Jack's life, filling his days with joy. Jack's love for Luna and Lucky had only grown over time. He had always wanted a family, but after losing his own, he wasn't sure if it would ever be possible again. But now, with Luna and Lucky by his side, he realized that family wasn't just about blood. It was about the love and care that people and animals gave to each other. One Saturday, Jack decided it was time to do something special for his little family. He had been thinking about it for weeks. He knew that Lucky and Luna had brought so much love into his life, and he wanted to show them just how much they meant to him. He took them both for a long walk through the neighborhood, and as they strolled along, he talked to them. "You two have changed my life," he said, his voice soft and full of emotion. "I don't know where I'd be without you. I'm so thankful you found me." Luna's ears perked up as if she understood. She gave Jack a gentle nudge with her nose, her eyes filled with affection. Lucky, of course, was more interested in the trees and squirrels along the path, but he glanced up at Jack every so often, his tail wagging. After their walk, Jack took Luna and Lucky to the park. It was a sunny afternoon, and the park was full of families and their dogs. Lucky immediately ran to a group of other puppies eager to play. Luna, however, stayed close to Jack, always keeping an eye on her puppy as he explored. As the sun began to set, Jack sat down on a bench, with Luna beside him and Lucky playing nearby. He smiled to himself, feeling the deep sense of contentment. This was the life he had always dreamed of, a life full of love, laughter, and happiness. "I'm glad you're here with me," Jack whispered to Luna, his hand gently resting on her back. Luna looked up at him, her tail wagging slightly. And then something incredible happened. Lucky ran up to Jack, holding a stick in his mouth, and placed it in his lap, as if offering it as a gift. Jack couldn't help but laugh. "Is this your way of saying thank you?" he asked, ruffling Lucky's fur. Lucky wagged his tail and barked happily, his little eyes sparkling with joy. It was as if he knew exactly what Jack meant. Luna looked at them both, and Jack knew in that moment that they were a family, his family, and that was all that mattered. As they sat there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Jack realized that everything he had been through, his struggles, his losses, had led him to this moment. He had found his true family in Luna and Lucky, and nothing would ever change that. They had been through so much together. They had faced challenges and fears, but through it all, their love for each other had only grown stronger. Jack knew that no matter what happened in the future, they would always be there for each other. The world might be unpredictable, but one thing was certain. Luna, Jack, and Lucky were a family, and together they could face anything. As the night fell, they walked home side by side, the stars shining above them, their hearts full of love and happiness. Jack, Luna, and Lucky had found something special, something that would last forever, a bond that no one could break.